Hey folks, and welcome to the Truck King YouTube channel. This is the 2025 Honda Ridgeline Trailsport. Now the Trailsport trim is all about adding off-road functionality to this vehicle. And no, we don't have mud and dirt today, but we do have plenty of snow and ice to put it to the test. So in this video, we'll test that all-wheel drive system, we'll talk power and handling, but then dive into what is maybe the most important question. Why does the Ridgeline always get forgotten about when we talk about mid-sized trucks? Let's dive into that and more right now. There's only one power plant you're gonna find in the Ridgeline. That's a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6. It makes 280 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque, and that is sent through a 9-speed automatic transmission. So Ridgeline was updated last year in 2024. Trailsport was new last year, so it is still a new trim on this truck. And the styling was slightly revised, a bit of a different nose on it. That big ridge line back there across the tailgate was added. And I do think it looks good. I feel like they just had to keep updating it to make sure it didn't feel like it was getting stale or dated. So you know what, why don't I throw it back to you guys right now? Just drop in the comments. Let me know what you think of the styling here on the Ridgeline. So what exactly do you get with Trailsport? Well, it starts with tires, an 18-inch set of wheels, and then all-terrain tires. Today we have winter tires on here thanks to Honda Canada, but yes, normally stock, those would be ATs. You get revised suspension all the way around to help soak up some of that off-road beating, and then you're also getting a skid plate package. And you can take a look at that package right here because we did have a Trailsport and we put it up on our rack to take a look at those plates. No, there are no exposed tow hooks up here on the front end, which is kind of frustrating, but there is a tow hook right over here. And yes, that is buried pretty low underneath the truck, so if this thing was sunk in the mud, good luck getting to this. Although thankfully there is a tow hook. You do have to have one if you want to claim to be an off-roader, so nice to have that. And then when it comes to protection, not a ton. This is all just plastic, plastic, plastic. This guy right here is the one steel skid plate that's added to the Trailsport package, and that is protecting your oil pan. Now, just because of the way this engine is designed, and it is a front-wheel drive setup, that oil pan would be hanging down and be the first thing to take a beating, and that's a problem. So I appreciate this one skid plate. It's in the right spot. I just wish there was more, because as you can see, essentially everything else is opened up. Now, there is this guy over here. That's plastic, and it's actually fairly thin plastic. It's probably some type of composite, but even still, that's the one other plate you get for protection, rolling all the way to the back, and it ends right there. Now, as we work our way back, there's also unique styling a little bit for the Trailsport, like the badges that you're getting and some stitching inside. And this color, although not Trailsport specific, it was introduced on the Trailsport models, and personally, I really like this blue. Now we get back here to the bed, and there's a couple tricks that I have to show you. These are not new, but you got to go over them with every Ridgeline. So first of all, not damped. The tailgate opens traditionally, but then if you reach right under here, there's an extra handle. You can also swing it to the side. What good is this? Well, access. Now I'm able to get up right here to the edge of my bed and reach in and grab things. So it just makes things that much closer. And then you can also access the trunk. Yes, the Ridgeline has a trunk here. This is an awesome feature, especially for things like groceries or just anything you want to keep out of the elements. And you'll also notice the spare tire is tucked in there too with some tools. So a really neat feature there with the Ridgeline trunk. Outside of that, you're getting LED lighting back here in the bed. We do have a spray-in bed liner, which is nice. And then also a tiny little storage bin over here on the passenger side as well. So lots of neat little bed features. I'd say the biggest downside on this bed is how shallow it is. It's not very deep, but outside of that, yeah, this bed offers everything every other truck bed does in this segment and more. So now we can talk towing and payload. Off of your 2-inch hitch down there, you're gonna do 5,000 pounds of towing, and I'll check the door jamb sticker for payload. And this is a really strong point of the Ridgeline. This truck as it sits has 1,477 pounds of payload. And I can honestly say, we test mid-sized trucks all the time. I don't remember the last time I saw a mid-sized truck with over 1,400 pounds of payload. So yes, if you just want to carry heavy stuff, the Ridgeline's good at doing that too. Let's take a look at the back seat on this Ridgeline now. Let me start with the baby seat situation. So there are 3 lower latch positions and there's 3 top tethers, but I have to tell you, these are the strangest top tethers I've ever used. You use a little redirect loop behind the seat and then the tether hooks to a hook down there below the seat. It's very strange and I've never seen anything like that in any other vehicle. It works just fine. It's just kind of annoying to have to install. Now, before I climb in, let me also show you this. There's a 60-40 split here. The seat backs come up. The seat bottoms come up. The seat backs don't go down, but it does reveal all this space. You are left with this channel right here, so it's not a totally flat floor. But outside of that, it's nice that the seats get right up out of your way for quite a bit of storage. And then these drop back down and lock in, and now I'll climb in. So on paper, this is 36.7 inches of rear seat legroom, and it is just enough. This is my seating position here, so sure, this could be pulled forward more, but even as it is, it's not bad. I'm just rubbing. My knees don't feel all that tall, which is nice. And then headroom is fine. I can move around back here, and I'm not really hitting. So yeah, actually, I would say I fit decently in this back seat, and I stand at 6'2". Now, when it comes to amenities, I do have heated seats over here, which is nice, and I have HVAC controls, plus my own vents there, which is always nice, and I like these molded cup holders that are right here, molded into the door. So as back seats go in mid-size trucks, this is one of the better ones for sure. All right, folks, here I am behind the wheel. Before we go for a drive, I want to do some all-wheel drive testing. I like to come out here on a snow-packed road and floor it just to see what the all-wheel drive system does. So we're going to start in normal mode, and then we'll do one in snow mode. And yes, a reminder, I do have snow tires on, so that's going to help. And let's see what happens. Taking off in 3, 2, 1, go. Really good. So it did cut my power off the line. The second it felt that slip, it cuts the power and then it rolls it back on. I would actually say it rolled it back on fairly aggressively compared to some of the all-wheel drive systems we test. And what's most important, after having done a lot of these tests, some vehicles have a tendency to pull you one way or the other. And this thing felt like it was just nice and dead straight. So the all-wheel drive system reacted quickly and felt solid. Now we'll do one in snow mode and see if there's a difference. Okay, take 2. Now we put it down into snow mode. And we'll do the exact same thing and see what happens. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so they didn't feel all that different. Snow mode cut the power more aggressively. Snow mode seemed to be sort of anticipating the slip, and the second those tires slipped, it was like, nope, no power whatsoever. But then once again, it rolls the power back on, and my foot's on the floor, so it's all ECU doing this. Yeah, it rolls that power back on, and still hits pretty hard off the line. That's really good all-wheel drive, man. The key with all of these systems is that you want it to feel proactive. You don't want it to feel like it's reacting, and you don't want it to feel like it's reacting slowly. You want it to be right on top of it, and this definitely felt like it was. So on a snowy day, and I did say it, but I'll say it again, we have snow tires on. I do think that's very important. But for snowy roads, icy roads like this, it's a good all-wheel drive system, man. Not to mention that the Ridgeline also has torque vectoring. So as you come around a corner, it will be able to send more power to your outside wheels and help you rotate. All of that is going to equal more confident driving on wintry roads. And now we're behind the wheel out for a drive here, folks. Now you saw it there. I did feel the power when I was flooring it for the all-wheel drive system test. And the power feels good. Granted, it's not quite as powerful as the other trucks in the segment, and it doesn't feel like it. We were just in a Nissan Frontier, which is also a naturally aspirated V6, and I'll say, yeah, the Frontier definitely feels like it has more power, but the Ridgeline also doesn't feel underpowered. It's not underwhelming. It feels like a pretty decent match for this vehicle. Now, I also wanted to bring up the Frontier because hopefully you saw here on the channel, we just recently had a 2025 Nissan Frontier, and I went over all the changes and we looked at the pricing, and in that video, I said there are only two places you can go in the midsize segment to get a naturally aspirated V6, and I named the Frontier and the Jeep Gladiator. And I totally forgot about the Ridgeline. So I want to dive into that question I asked off the top. Why do people forget about this truck? And I am guilty as well, and this is my job, okay? So I know I messed up. I should have included the Ridgeline. But now I've been driving this thing for a better part of a week, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And I think you have to acknowledge the Ridgeline is absolutely a mid-sized truck. It is absolutely competitive in this segment when you look at towing and power and payload and the bed and the back seat space. There's a ton of positives about this. But when you get behind the wheel of the Ridgeline, it doesn't feel anything like those other trucks. In a good way and a not so good way. Let's dive into that. When you drive the Ridgeline, it just feels like a big SUV or crossover, and that's okay. The suspension is super comfortable. You don't get any of the stiffness or chatter that you get out of the leaf springs in those other trucks. So yeah, there's just something about it that feels so buttoned down. And now here's where we'll get a little bit kind of philosophical. It just comes across as boring, super boring. There's nothing about it that has any emotion. There's nothing about it that feels, kind of trucky. I kept saying that word with the Frontier. You get in a Frontier and it just feels like a truck. And part of that is the fact that it is a little bit stiff and a bit heavy feeling. Whereas this Ridgeline, yeah, nothing about it feels trucky. Nothing about it feels exciting. It just kind of feels like an appliance, very much a point A to point B sort of vehicle. So in my head, this argument has to be split into two different boxes. Looking at the spec sheets, the Ridgeline has to be considered in the midsize segment. In fact, just the payload alone is better than every other midsize truck out there. So there's a lot of things this truck is going to do that the competition won't. But then the other box of the argument is just talking about them as trucks. The Ridgeline does not feel like a truck. And I think that's why a lot of people forget about it in this segment. I know I do. When I think midsize truck, I just don't think about the Ridgeline. And I do have one fact to back me up. Last year in 2024, Ridgeline sales were down 12%, and if you just look at the overall numbers, it's doing anywhere from 40,000 to 50,000 units a year. It's a tiny little sliver of the mid-sized truck pie. So it's not just me who forgets about this truck, it's also the American public who seem to forget about the Ridgeline. So all of that is to say, I like the Ridgeline. It's a really good product with a ton of beneficial features. But if you're looking for something that's giving you that emotion of, oh, I just bought a truck and this thing feels like a solid truck, that's not the Ridgeline. Now with those thoughts out of the way, let's just look a little bit more at how the Ridgeline actually handles. And we had a Trailsport last year. We compared it to a Ford Maverick Tremor here on the channel, so you can go see that whole video. But here's just some footage. We took this Ridgeline into some serious mud. Now I will say that Trailsport doesn't get more ground clearance, it doesn't get more approach or departure. So yes, the angles here are not great, the ground clearance is not great. I would still call Trailsport more of a rough road model than a real off-road model. That being said, even with its belly dragging through the mud, the all-wheel drive and the all-terrain tires pulled this thing through some pretty gnarly trails. I actually came away fairly impressed by this Ridgeline Trailsport. And you know what, a lot of these packages, especially when they first came out, were really just paint and plastic, a couple of stickers. But Trailsport with the tires and with the suspension, it's definitely a step above what you're gonna get out of a stock Ridgeline. Now, the final point I want to make is just the pricing. Here for this Trailsport model, you see in the video, we're a little bit north of $57,000. And yes, once you dress one of these things up, you can get it up to 60 grand easily. And that is another area where I think Honda could maybe swoop in as a value model. I already talked about people forget about the Ridgeline. Well, that's one thing Honda could do, because at 60 at the top end, yeah, this thing feels priced exactly like every other midsize truck out there. But maybe if they really want to get people's attention, they can knock some money off that MSRP. But that's not usually a Honda thing either. Honda usually does charge a premium. So yes, those are all Canadian prices, by the way. We'll throw up the US prices here. Well, folks, we are coming to the end of this one. So if you're in the market for a mid-size truck, don't forget about the Honda Ridgeline. It's comfortable, spacious inside, has great payload, and decent towing. Sure, is it boring? Yes. Is it soulless? I would say so. But if you can live with that and you go for a Ridgeline, you're getting a solid mid-size truck. So that's it for this one. Now, of course, I need to hear from you. Drop into the comments. Let me know what you think of the Ridgeline. Hey, do you own one of these things? Please let me know your thoughts on everything that I've laid out in this video. And while you're down there below, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King to see what we're testing next.